Hi and welcome to the Homeopathy Health Show. I'm Atiq Bhatti, a fourth generation homeopath with over 25 years of professional experience and practice in this field of healing. The Homeopathy Health Show is the online voice of homeopathy around the world, promoting and raising awareness of this truly unique system of healing, which is suitable for all ages, young and old. Every week I invite guests from the world of homeopathy to come and share their experiences, their work, offer insights, and essentially talk all things homeopathy. Why not visit www.liketreatslike.co.uk and click on the radio and podcast button to listen to the latest episodes. So let's begin today's show here on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio. Hi and welcome to another episode of the Homeopathy Health Show with me, Atiq Bhatti, and I do hope you are well and that you have, like me, had a delightful week. I'm so happy that I am joined for this 3-part special by Luke Norland, none other than Luke Norland. And Luke is one of the principals at the School of Homeopathy in the UK. And we're going to talk about something very, very deep and very profound. And I think you're going to absolutely love it. So before we go into that, Luke Norland, my dear friend, I often bump into you now at the School of Homeopathy. It's a delight, and it's so nice to have you on the Homeopathy Health Show.
Thanks, Atiq. Yeah, it's lovely to be with you, as always. And, you know, once you've met someone in person, it makes Zoom a lot more kind of friendly and intimate, I think. And, so it's nice to be in your presence in that way.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you. And likewise, the honor is mine, actually, to have you on the show. And you're so right. You know, it's funny, even if you meet somebody for like 5 minutes or even 2 minutes, it just changes the dynamics of a relationship, doesn't it? It's amazing.
It does. Yeah.
It really is. I should try that more often.
Yeah, so many times now, you know, well, distance is a factor with patients, but you see them for the first time on Zoom, and it's a shame. But needs must. So
I actually had I was treating some patients recently. They invited, because by the grace of God everything worked, they're all happy, and they invited me to a nice veggie evening, and it was just so surreal for the first few moments. They're looking at me, you know, because we spent 6 months just talking online, and this you know, that initial look, and you think, don't look, don't see me on Zoom, don't.
That's right. And you have to make sure the bit that you don't see on Zoom is not got any food stains on it or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. The gym jams, isn't it?
Gym jam bottoms.
Hey, I'm wearing jeans, ladies and gentlemen, just in case. I'm not wearing shorts today, okay?
Okay.
It's not warm enough in the UK, actually, but not this quite. Is at the time of recording, so who knows?
Yeah, not quite.
Luke, when we do meet at the school, and I know that obviously you're teaching and there's a variety of subjects, but you have been working on something very, very profound, which is almost like an amalgamation of the ideas of Rudolf Steiner, his threefold system, principles of Ayurveda, Peter Tumminello's crystal structures, Jan Scholten's plant theory, of course, Mappa Mundi, and the realms, very etheric, I must say, the miasms and also the kingdoms. And really the idea was to invite you on for this 3-part, is really just for you to share your sort of thought process and how all of this comes together, because truly speaking, it sounds absolutely fascinating, and if I may say, sounds genius.
Oh, well, let's hope there's something in it. So I'll try and explain what I've been doing. And like, it goes back to the fact that I've always had an interest in understanding the modern world in terms of ancient law, wherever possible. And I grew up with my father, a homeopath, and my mother, a very keen astrologer. And the two of them, you know, and they had books by Jung, and, you know, so Jung as well is a kind of hero of mine. And he used the I Ching with his patients as well. He was interested in Oriental philosophy, and so there was a special time about 100 years ago when a guy called Wilhelm was translating the I Ching into, I guess, into German to start with, and then, and it's in English now. So there was this like carrying over of Eastern philosophy into Europe at a special time. And yeah, so what kind of sparked this journey for me was coming across a group in America who invited me to do a talk, and they're running this thing called the Coherence Lab and using gemotherapy, homeopathy, astrology,
Mm.
human design, and getting different practitioners with different hats on and different types of experience to try and help people with stuck cases. So you get in there, and people are going to come at the case from different angles and hopefully help. And that speaks to one of the things that I think is going on at the moment, which I kind of call it like the age of synthesis.
Mm.
So especially in homeopathy, there's been this like explosion of different ideas and different systems and genius concepts working with the kingdoms, especially by people like Jan Scholten, Rajan Sankaran, and now the Joshis,
Mm.
Gandhi, that Michal Yakir. I'm probably missing some people too. Massimo Mangialavori has some, incredible insights too. And it feels like it's very exciting, right?
Mm.
And
Mm.
it's one of the things that got me hooked on homeopathy was that level of creativity and willingness to evolve within it. I was like, oh, I definitely won't get bored studying this. Um, so there comes a point where you have to start bringing that back together
Yeah.
because otherwise it's too confusing. And when you're teaching at a school and you're taking people from year one to year four, you can see what the journey is like now. And it is like very saturating. There's a lot to take on board. And compared to 30, 40 years ago, or even longer now, that my dad was studying homeopathy with the Druids in London. It's a lot more complicated now, and there's a lot more different remedies. And you could say that people, when they come to see a homeopath now, I find that it's rare that they naturally fit into the essences that we have in our materia medica. Like if you read the essence of lycopodium, it's quite rare that someone really truly fits that essence. And I don't mean to say that lycopodium is not an effective remedy anymore. It absolutely is. It's just that the expression of the archetype of lycopodium has kind of shifted, I would say.
I absolutely agree with you. I do talk about this a lot as well, that we have some great minds, okay? Of course, your respected self included, and putting all these things together. But it's such genius, right? That, and I use that word again intentionally, that we have new provings, we have new remedies, we have progress in homeopathy because 200 odd years ago, diseases were not as complex as they are now.
Mm,
Everything has changed, right? It's a total, I mean, if you look at a seesaw, it's totally the other opposite side of it. We're totally in a different environment, culture, the planet itself, everything else that aligns. So many things going on, lifestyles, wants, desires, everything seems to be so different. And pathology has obviously changed as well. You could
mm,
say it's progressed, sadly.
yeah,
It's so important, isn't it, to have new remedies and
yeah,
because they work. The bird remedies work, the lac remedies work, the some of the things that you've mentioned, it all works, doesn't it?
yeah,
And it's timely.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. So I think that one of the drives for me is to try and fit things together in a way that honors like ancient wisdom and natural laws, essentially, and to sort of pick up the story. One of these, I made a friend in this coherence lab group, or a few friends, I should say, and they've been kind of helping me. They've developed my ideas with human design and the I Ching and homeopathy, but one of them she did a chart of my son, and being an astrologer myself, I've obviously looked at his astrology chart and seen various things, but she did his human design chart and told me a load of stuff about how he is and how he would like to be communicated with, and a lot of it rang very true and was kind of sort of made sense in a way that the astrological chart didn't necessarily.
Mm.
And to give you a sort of brief overview of human design, it's basically a system which takes the astrological wheel, the zodiac, and looks at the planets when you were born and also 88 days before you were born. And all of those planets have a position in the normal zodiac, but they also have a position in the I Ching. And the I Ching is like a system of yin and yang, basically. It's like you can see it as a kind of binary code. So you've got yang, which is the active masculine principle, and yin, which is the receptive feminine principle. And we all know this as healers. We know that there's an interplay between yin and yang. And when you talk about like active and receptive, or creative and receptive, it calls to mind what Hahnemann says about primary and secondary action in the organon. So when we get ill, it happened, we sort of experience that first on the dynamic plane. And what happens is that the vital force is receptive to influence all the time. It's got that receptivity. And when something knocks it, it then has to react. So you've got the idea of Hahnemann saying that, we can see the disease in terms of the distortions in sensation and function. So the body experiences a sensation, I'm chilly, and then it has a function which restores homeostasis, that, it, whatever it is that brings back the warmth into the body. Okay, so basically underpinning the I Ching is this idea of yin and yang that we see in Oriental medicine as well.
I love that. I think that's absolutely fascinating with what you've just said so far. And I'm quite excited to know more about this when you're born and how where the planets are aligned. It can actually basically what you're saying is you can read somebody, right? You can read them. You can read them like a book.
Yeah.
This is the destiny. Dare I say it? This is what you are and who you will be and what it's all about, right?
Yeah, I think of it as a blueprint. And, in that way, it's very similar to the DNA, the idea of you've got this like basic instruction manual. And, sort of joke, don't you, when you become a parent, that a baby doesn't come with an instruction manual. And
Yeah.
that's true. But human design does go some way to giving you that instruction manual. And that is what it's designed to do. So the person who founded it was profoundly unhappy in their life. And various people have gone through these big transformational shifts where, you're profoundly unhappy and then something happens that gives you this epiphany. And, for him, it was creating human design. And at the heart of human design is about not using your mind to make decisions. So he was a person who was probably riddled with what he called not self. So you've got the principle of self and not self. And wherever you have not self in human design is where your mind tries to condition you to be a certain way. And we pick that up from other people as well. So we get sort of conditioned by others when we're around them. And I liked that definition of like, it's very just simple, not self. And it occurred to me that in homeopathy, when you need a remedy, it's because you're being not self rather than self, essentially. And when you're not self, you can be influenced by any other imprint. It doesn't have to be from another human being. It could be from anything in nature because we all share the same consciousness. And that's why homeopathy works. That consciousness that creates every living thing in the world is one and the same. So
This is lovely. This is right up my street, I have to tell you. I think it's just great. My question here, not a question really. I hardly do ask questions, but my thought is this, it's very much, it almost explains, because you mentioned we're all this consciousness, that this global consciousness that we have as entities, as beings, but it also is about energy, isn't it? How everything is just for birth, for that miracle to take place, the amount of energy that is required is immense, right?
Yeah.
It's not just a look through the lens and the sperm fertilize the egg. That's probably the easy part, right? It's what actually went into all of that to be able to even appreciate. I mean, it's huge, isn't it? Profound.
Very profound. Yeah, very profound. And if you think about the various synchronicities that take place that lead to the precise moment an individual is born, and you know, for when, you know, for my son and my daughter's birth, I was like aware of the time and clocking it. And you know, with my son, he was born at exactly the moment that the moon went into Gemini, and it was like, wow, there's a real like definite gesture towards that Gemini quality in him,
Hmm.
and it's very evident now in his communication skills and in his desire to talk. Sometimes he just says, "Talk, Daddy." Yeah,
Brilliant.
yeah,
Talk about
okay.
human design and see where that goes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So yeah, he really needs that. So you pick these things up from a chart, whether it's astrology or human design.
I have to say, you know, Luke, you're a really proud dad, and I remember when we first spoke as well, and it's so nice because when you talk about your kids, your eyes light up. You know, I'm just saying this because this is an audio recording, and for those just imagining, it's a very it's actually a very humbling experience. I have to say, I can see that love and that electricity in your eyes. You know,
Thank you.
it's just there. It's so nice.
Yeah.
And enjoy, I say to everybody listening, actually, enjoy the moments you have with your young children because my God, time flies. And before
Uh,
you know it, you know, you're wrong. They know it.
they know
And,
everything.
and they're correcting you for everything. And it's like, okay, maybe do you have a point there, you know?
Yeah,
Hey, progress.
absolutely.
Or in the name of progress.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know,
Hmm.
this human design, I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you, if I was to give you some details, then that means you can map me out, right? As such.
Yeah. Yeah. So you need to have a pretty precise time of birth, ideally.
Hmm.
So time, date, and place of birth is all you need to know. And yeah, I have a software that will draw up a chart, and you get a sort of mandala around the, you know, a circle which contains all of the different hexagrams of the I Ching arranged in the traditional way.
Hmm.
And so to give you a bit more detail on the I Ching, essentially you've got a yin line, which is a broken line,
Hmm.
and a yang line, which is a solid line. And what it was used for originally was as an oracle, as a divination tool.
Hmm.
So you come to a point in your life where you can't make a decision. And you know, this goes back to the idea that the mind can't make decisions. And we're conditioned to think that we have to rationalize and, you know, use a logical processing circuit to make our decisions. But that really doesn't work. And it was used as a divination tool because the mind can't make decisions, right? And so when you basically would use yarrow stalks in the old days or coins, and based on the number that the coins give you, it says whether you get a yin line or a yang line. And you do that 6 times, and that gives you your theme, for which you know, you can't make a decision. And basically, you know, because you're just using your body and you're not using your mind, you're tapping into your unconscious. And
Hmm.
so Jung's idea was that the I Ching is tapping into the collective unconscious, and he used it with his patients. And there was a man who he talked about who was about to, you know, he thought he'd met a woman who he could marry, but he was aware that he was struggling with a mother complex and thought he had a doubt whether, you know, she would be like his mother. And they did the I Ching, and they got the hexagram, the marrying maiden, and it said, you know, the maiden is too powerful, basically, and you know
Hmm.
that you shouldn't marry. So it somehow taps into your unconscious. Um, so what you get with human design is like this blueprint of the main archetypes that are important for you, for your personality, for your life. But it also shows you the energy of the body using similar thing to the chakra system.
Hmm.
So it'll say that in my case, you know, my sacral center is defined and gives me a certain, you know, set of qualities. And you know, it kind of, so it shows you the energetic makeup of each person, taking you into the body, taking you into the affinities and chakras, which is also very nice.
Wow. You know, I'm I'm fascinated by this. I'm just going to carry on asking you to tell me a bit more about how, well, for the listeners, how does this link into the realms? Because you mentioned
Yeah.
ideas from the realms and you
Yeah.
mentioned the inner age. And these are two things, miasms, perhaps, possibly, homeopaths certainly would understand and appreciate kingdoms, of course, but inner
Yeah.
age and realms is something quite new, isn't it?
Yeah, it's something that Mahesh Gandhi uses in his personal evolution model. So he was a psychiatrist and then trained by Sankaran and adopted this evolution model, um, which draws a lot of inspiration from Michal Yakir and her work on the plants. So she looks at the plants as evolving from sort of feminine to masculine. So again, it's a yin yang model
Hmm.
essentially. And you've got that very broad classification. So the early flowering plants, like the pulsatilla, for
Hmm.
example, has a very open, sort of exposed flower, showing that receptivity of the yin. And then skip all the way over to the other side of the table, you get the asteroid group, which has daisy and arnica and chamomilla, and it's got a composite flower, so it's all about lots of individual flowers forming one, and that is like the pinnacle of the yang expression, or the society rather than the individual, if you like. And within that system, she used Eric Erikson was a student of Freud, and he took on Freud's idea of the psychosexual development and turned it into psychosocial development. And
Hmm.
he said there were eight different stages of development that a human being goes through. And the idea is that, at the inner age is the age at which somebody becomes stuck based on their life circumstances and their predisposition. And that is what Michal uses to help map the plants. So somebody in her system, somebody who has a very like old, mature inner age, often resonates with tree remedies, for example.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
Can you give some more examples there? That's very, very interesting.
Yeah. So one group of remedies that relates to like the baby stage. So if you're stuck at the baby stage, it's that you want immediate gratification of your needs, essentially.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, and that would be the Solanaceae family, is one of the main groups that you would know, in the plants. Yeah, and then the teenage age is the Ranunculaceae family, where you have to sort of school age and teenage. So school age is where you have your first kind of encounter with hierarchy and rules and laws, and
Hmm.
anacardium's a remedy that's in that particular group. So yeah, so the inner age is a system of eight. We have this, basically what I'm looking at is different numbers and different shapes that can be used. So eight seems to be a bit of a magic number in that there are eight trigrams, there are eight positions of the Mappa Mundi, there are eight electrons in the outer shell of a mineral or of an element when it's complete. Um, so yeah, and there are eight stages of the lunation cycle, which is the relationship between sun and moon, and probably other other
This is brilliant.
correlations
I tell
using
you
it.
what, absolutely brilliant, you know. And in fact, thank you for coming up with, for putting all this together. I think I'm absolutely, it's so up my street, you know that.
Yeah,
It just so clicks. I love
great.
it. I've got so many things to ask you, but please carry on, carry on.
Thank you. I'll tell you about the realms, because that
Yeah.
is kind of a real, that is a what I use in homeopathy to find animal remedies mainly. And obviously I wrote a book, Animalia, which is heavily inspired by Peter Fraser, who studied at the school, was a great um, colleague and collaborator with my father on the provings. And he
Hmm.
wrote several books, which people are very good value books and very succinct, elegant books. And he has one that's about the realms in homeopathy. And it's basically his four realms are the underworld, the sky, the earth, and the sea. And essentially, you can map the animals quite easily onto the different realms. So like the underworld is mainly the snakes and the reptiles, and they have
Hmm.
that, that basically you look at their evolution and they they withdrew from the competitiveness of the animal world to the cracks and the crevices and the caves, and they develop their superpowers within that realm, and they take you to your death, essentially with their venom. So they have that theme of the underworld and death and
Hmm.
all of the destructive things that are matched. When someone has very destructive pathology, usually they're matched by something like snake venom or something with a syphilitic miasm.
But also when you are buried, not you, sorry, I mean that was a blooper. Sorry, when we when we're buried,
Yeah,
let's say in a coffin, it's the insects, aren't they, that
yeah.
eat everything away.
Recycling, yeah.
Yeah, so it makes sense, doesn't it? Because it has to be underworld. It can't be done sort of in the other way as such, unless it's very barbaric, of course. But yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the fungi are another, sort of occupant of that realm, and have that picture within them. And yeah, usually I sort of come to fungi remedies when it's like somebody has more death processes going on than life processes, if you
Hmm.
like, because their disease is so strong.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
usually people who have an underworld realm in the case, they've had a lot of heavy stuff to deal with from a very young age, a lot of heavy karma, and that's how we can see the underworld.
Question for you, actually. So does that mean that uh, the blueprint includes that heavy karma,
Um, the blueprint,
or
yeah,
does it make
you
you
can see it.
predisposed to something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking in astrological terms,
Yeah.
it's shown by Pluto, which is related to the Greek god Hades, and Hades is the guardian of the underworld. And where someone's Pluto is in their astrological chart, if it's sort of strongly aspected to their sun or maybe their moon, then it could give you or even on the ascendant, it can show you, wow, this person's going to have a lot of underworld energy to deal with.
Wow, you've got it. Well, hey, I know we're recording a podcast, but you've got to get. I'm going to send you my information. I'll
Yeah.
be very interested to
Oh
know.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
we do move on to the other parts of the realm because you mentioned underworld, you mentioned sky, earth, and the sea.
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously, the main animal group that inhabit the sky and have that freedom and independence are the birds.
Birds.
And then you get something like the insects, who their main realm is the earth. But certain members of the insects, they have this extreme transformative process where they end up in the sky. So they go through their chrysalis and their metamorphosis, and they become a winged adult, and they have, all of the beauty and freedom and sort of, synchronicity we might associate with a butterfly, can be there in the case. So you can track that kind of evolution in the life story of the patient. Like, they had a lot of earthy experience of like working a boring job, having to take medication from the doctor because they needed antidepressants or something. They had a husband that wasn't kind to them, or a spouse, or, a lot of these things that kind of trap them in the earthly realm of 9 to 5. We could say row 4 of the periodic table if we're
Hmm.
thinking that way. And then at some point, they have this big change that happens where they become aware of a deeper meaning to life, and maybe a spiritual purpose comes through. And that shows that movement from the earth to the sky, essentially. And
Wow.
that's what Peter Fraser wrote about. So that was very inspiring and very helpful for the animals, apart from the mammals. I
Hmm.
was like, but the mammals are so diverse that they are in every realm. You've got whales and dolphins that have gone back to the sea. You've got bats that have gone to the sky. You've got the bovid group, like cows and sheep, that form these big communities, and have perhaps what's the name for when they make their big journeys? I always forget now.
The migration.
Migrations, yeah. They might undergo these big journeys, and
Yeah,
then
the Sereng the wildebeest, right? Serengeti.
wildebeest. Yeah, exactly. And so you've got this huge diversity. You've got mice and rodents. You've got otters and beavers. You've got cats. You've got dogs. You've got ancient mammals like koala and sloth, and you've got elephants. You've got so many different types of mammal, and they're very close. We are mammals too. So sometimes when in doubt, um, you can often get a response from a mammal remedy. And it's very, very common that people present with like what we call milk themes in
Mm.
homeopathy, which is essentially a wound at the level of their identity. They don't know who they are because they felt like they were betrayed by the ones who should love them, essentially. So there's a real wound in terms of am I lovable?
Mm.
And often there's like food addictions that try to kind of fill and plug that gap of feeling unloved. And like because you feel unloved, you try on lots of different identities to try and please people, right?
Mm.
So you see this a lot, and it's kind of at the base of the human condition a lot of the time. And a lot of people were not breastfed, and I mean, that's changing now, but that being breastfed by mother and being looked after by your tribe sets up the kind of like healthy human life, essentially. So there's a lot of mammal cases out there, and I found it really difficult. Like I was like, oh, it's obviously a mammal case, but which mammal? It's
Mm.
quite hard to know. You can give the tried and trusted, like Lac humanum, Lac caninum, Lac felinum, the ones we know sort of that have been in homeopathy longer.
Yeah.
But then there's lots of other mammals that are being introduced as well. And yeah.
It's it how are you going to put this all together?
Yeah.
How is this going to be presented? I mean, is this yeah.
It'll be quite graphical. Essentially, it's a bit like the Mappa Mundi, where you see a circle, and you can either see the circle in terms of polarity, like with the Mappa Mundi, or in terms of the realm and how they relate to one another that way. And yeah, there'll be lots of different sort of types of information overlaid on the same circle, essentially. And basically, with the mammals to complete that story, Peter, again, one of my heroes, said to me when I was writing Animalia, he said, "Look at Steiner's threefold system for understanding mammals," and that is literally a study into the body organization of different mammals. So
Mm.
Steiner said that human being is we haven't been around so long, so our threefoldness is fairly equal. So you've got your cranium, which is the nervous sensory system, and you've got the middle system or the rhythmic system it's called, which is the heart and lungs. So you've got the inhale and exhale rhythm and the beating of the heart rhythm that powers the body. And then you've got the abdominal cavity, which is the least protected and is linked with the locomotor system. So when you look at a mammal, you can see usually one of those systems is predominant.
Mm.
So when you look at the rodents, they have big craniums,
Mm.
basically, and everything else is very small and undeveloped. And it's also reflected in the teeth. So they have very prominent incisors and have to gnaw continuously, otherwise their teeth just keep on growing. Then when you look at the dogs and cats, they have big thorax, so they have big, accent on the rhythmic system, and they have pronounced canines because they're eating meat. And then you have the big-bodied cows, wildebeests, etc., which are much more metabolic. So this kind of classification allows you to ground the case in the physical affinities and help you find a mammal based on, Steiner's idea and his approach.
This is brilliant. And to bring it into, I think you're the first one to do something like this, aren't you, on this level anyway? Hmm?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Yeah.
Wow. Genius. Honestly, kudos to you. That is just, I'm loving this. I got so many things going on in my head, so many questions to ask. For a moment, I was a student there. I forgot I was hosting the show. Um, so,
Yeah.
not many homeopaths possibly may know about Rudolf Steiner.
Mm,
Um, and, the the genius that he was.
mm.
Um,
Yeah.
but if you can sort of just introduce him, I think that would be
Yeah.
very, very appropriate to all of this because it does start from there, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that was the start of I was aware that I needed to write a follow-up book that explored this threefold idea more. And that was a kind of a starting point. And I would still like to um when I put pen to paper to include a big section on the mammals as part of it. So Steiner I don't know that much, but I recently I was like, I need to understand anthroposophical medicine a little bit
Mm,
more,
yeah.
because it is intriguing, and I feel like one of the main things as homeopaths we need to do is sort of get off the pedestal a little bit and incorporate ourselves within other healing modalities a little more. And one of those ways would be to work alongside anthroposophical doctors, for example.
Mm,
And one passage really caught my eye, which was the kind of definition of what an anthroposophical doctor would do. And it was about a kind of continually evolving relationship of like sort of mutual discovery between the practitioner and the patient. And that really, I was like, oh yeah, that's what I do, just naturally. And I know that we have beautiful things from Hahnemann, instructions, if you like, about the unprejudiced observer and about how to record the image of the disease and all of this. But a lot of the time now, I'm getting patients who don't really have physical symptoms when they come because everything's, mental and emotional, essentially.
mm.
There's so much dissonance there that that's the center of the case. And so a lot of the time, you're having to support a kind of evolving process of like undoing patterns that the ego has imposed on that person, sort of
Mm.
behavioral coping strategies that hide the weakness. And so you've got to allow them to feel safe enough to expose their vulnerability to really, go through it. And I think that's where the I Ching's good because it's called the Book of Change, the Book of Changes. And it's about, helping people go through really kind of deep transformational shifts.
Mm.
That's what I think that's one of the things homeopathy can do, and we can help people with that.
It really is fascinating, and it's interesting, isn't it? How it changes the outlook on even prescribing, and how it changes the outlook on observation. You just
Mm,
mentioned Hahnemann, and as far as observations are concerned, but with this method, it does change it because the blueprint is there, and if you can find that blueprint, then
mm,
I mean, you could argue that over and above any physical observation required, you've got it all there. It's just there. It's black and white, isn't it? Literally, it's there.
mm, mm.
You know.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's a real. So this whole thing is about having a map or a compass that
Mm,
helps you navigate through the case, and it will influence your case taking as well. I've found that understanding. So the next part of the story, I suppose, is I started seeing the parallels between I Ching and homeopathy. Essentially, like human design in and of itself is a fantastic tool and a great system, and it uses astrology to take you into the body and see the energetics at work. That's all great, but it's a whole thing in and of itself. It'd be too much to ask homeopaths to learn it really. Because I already had the background in astrology, I felt like I could do it, but
mm.
I'm sure other people can too. I don't want to be big-headed about it. But um, where was I going? It was about, yeah. No, I've lost myself now.
Okay.
Went off on too many tangents.
I'm a bit like the Matrix, isn't it?
Now
I
I
think
know where I was now.
I
Sorry.
just think I think I took the red
Yeah.
pill. You know
Yeah.
that.
Why oh why? Um,
Bring me back.
yeah.
Bring me back.
Yeah. And so basically, there there are eight trigrams, right? And they're they're linked to nature. Okay, so you have heaven and earth,
Hmm,
thunder and wind,
okay.
lake and mountain, fire and water, and that's it. Those are your eight trigrams. Those are the fundamental building blocks that we're looking at, and essentially each one of those has a set of themes and also is assigned a family member in the I Ching. And I was like, oh, that's interesting because Scholten has this thing with the plants where he's looking at them and how included do they feel within their family or within
Hmm,
their group. And that I'd sort of not really used it very much until recently. And I thought, but that is really important. And it's also really important for mammals because they really need to feel that they belong, and they often don't. They feel betrayed or outcast, and that's a big etiological factor for them.
Mm.
So it's like basically you've got the mother and the father, like heaven and earth, the parents, and then you've got the eldest, middle, and youngest son, and the eldest, middle, and youngest daughter. And we all know deep within us that there are like resonant archetypes with each one of those. And so I'm a middle son, and I can really relate to, being the middle child and all that that entails. And when you look at like folklore, very often it's like a hero's journey, and the eldest son is sent off, and they fail, and then the middle son is sent off, and they also fail, but they end up doing something random, and then the youngest son gets all the luck, and they're the ones who complete the mission. And so you've got these like myths and folklore written into the family members. So I'm always asking people now where they were in their family, within their sibling group, and then also how included do they feel in, any group setting, or do they need their tribe, or do they prefer to be removed from it? And you've got this, if you've got like a central pillar of feeling very included and very important, and you like being in your family and your group, you've got ones that are kind of trying to push into and be a part of, and ones that have been pushed out and are not part of it anymore,
Mm.
and the more outcast types. So that was the next part of the puzzle, really, was using someone's chart to see how included they feel within a family group, and asking people and seeing if it plays out, seeing if it marries up with what their chart says. And then from that, you can then say, well, this person needs a particular plant or mammal based on, their position in the family.
It's just honestly, Luke Norland, that's absolutely brilliant. It's so interesting. It really is. When you, I think there's a million things going on in my head, so let me just compose my thoughts. But I would say to you that it just makes so much sense. It absolutely does. Because we talk about so many different things in life, right? The where, the how, the why, the what. Why did this happen? Why did that happen? Was this destiny? Was this predestiny? How can we change destiny? What am I about? Who am I? Who am
Yeah,
I? What am I about? Right?
yeah,
This human design method is like, well, hang on a minute. I can tell you, it might
yeah,
take a bit of time,
yeah.
but this is what you're about, and this is what you're going to be about.
Mm,
So
mm,
almost you could say, if you know, then there's
mm,
no stress in life. I mean, I say that
mm.
very lightly, obviously, but
Yeah,
it's almost like, because right? You know what you're about, right? And I think
yeah.
it answers that $20 million question
Mm,
of what is my purpose in this life?
mm,
What am I
mm,
supposed to be doing? And how does everybody else relate to me,
mm,
I absolutely love that.
mm.
Well, we've actually come to the end of part one.
Nice.
And I think there is so much to talk about. And we will be back with part two and
Yeah.
parts two and three very soon. And we will try to go into this a bit more in depth and perhaps
Mm.
look at it as the modules and how they ultimately slot in. So, this
Yeah,
part,
I'll prepare some case studies so I
yeah,
can show what I'm doing and how it's working and helping
yeah,
me and ultimately prescribe remedies. That's the name of the game, isn't it? So
yeah. Brilliant. Luke Noland, absolute honor as always. It always has been, and I can't wait to talk to you some more.
thank you, Atiq, and same to you. And yeah, have a lovely evening.
Thank you. I do hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the Homeopathy Health Show. Please do support the show by clicking follow on my socials. Remember, the more exposure the podcast receives, the better for homeopathy around the world. You can find me on Instagram by searching for @like_treatslike, and on both Facebook and TikTok by searching for @like_treatslike. So let's promote the voice of homeopathy on radio and podcast around the world together. Don't forget to visit me online at www.liketreatslike.co.uk and click on the radio and podcast tab. Here you'll be able to see all the guests that have joined me on the show so far. And of course, you can stream on demand the latest episode to your mobile, tablet or PC. Until next time, stay safe and take care.